Let me tell you something that might shock you. The person who pulls away, who avoids eye contact, who acts like they don't care, isn't emotionally dead inside. In fact, they're craving something so badly it terrifies them. Not your silence, not your absence, but your consistent presence. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on avoidance, not to judge them, but to understand the truth they'll never say out loud. They may act cold, but here's what they're desperately hoping you'll give them. Avoidants don't pull away because they don't feel love. They pull away because they feel it too much, and they don't know how to handle that intensity. It's not that they're emotionally shut down. It's that their emotional wiring is overloaded by intimacy. Somewhere in their past, they learned that closeness equals risk. Maybe they had caregivers who were inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, or maybe they grew up in environments where expressing need or emotion led to criticism, rejection, or even punishment. So now, as adults, even when they meet someone who genuinely cares for them, their first instinct is to protect themselves. You may think, if they care about me, why do they run? Why do they go silent when things start to feel real? And the answer is simple. Emotional closeness feels like a threat to their nervous system. The more they care, the more vulnerable they feel. And vulnerability to them equals exposure. Exposure equals pain. Their emotional blueprint tells them, when you get too close, you get hurt. So rather than risking that pain again, they create distance. Not because they don't want love, but because they're afraid of being consumed by it. This is why avoidants often come off as cold or detached just when things start to deepen. It's not because they don't feel the connection. It's because they feel it so deeply that it scares them. They fear losing their independence, their sense of self, or being judged for their emotional needs. They're terrified of being seen too clearly because being seen in the past may have been followed by rejection or abandonment. What makes it more confusing is that avoidants often send mixed signals. One moment they're present and connected. The next, they pull back or go quiet. That's not because they're playing games. It's because they're trying to regulate the intensity of the connection. They're constantly trying to find a balance between their desire for closeness and their fear of it. And unless they've done deep healing work, they default to distance as a coping mechanism. If you understand this, if you can see their distance not as rejection, but as self-protection, you stop personalizing their behavior. You realize it's not about you. It's about an internal battle they haven't fully learned how to win. And beneath all that coldness is a person who craves connection, but only feels safe when they can control it. Avoidants aren't looking for someone to crack them open or force them to be emotionally available. What they truly want, though they rarely say it, is to feel safe being exactly who they are, without pressure, without judgment, and without the fear that they'll be emotionally punished for not showing up perfectly. Deep down, they long for someone who doesn't flinch at their emotional walls, but instead sees them, honors them, and still chooses to stay close in a grounded way. Growing up, many avoidants didn't have the luxury of emotional safety. Maybe they had parents who only responded to achievement, not emotion. Maybe they were made to feel weak when they cried, needy when they asked for affection, or dramatic when they expressed fear or hurt. Over time, they internalized the idea that emotions weren't safe to express, or worse, that they made them unlovable. So now, as adults, they put on a mask of composure, independence, and detachment. But behind that mask is someone who's quietly asking, will you still love me if I can't be strong all the time? Will you still want me if I can't give you the emotional version of me you expect? They may never voice it aloud, but avoidants crave the kind of connection where they don't have to perform, where they're allowed to be silent without being punished, where they can take space without being shamed, where their slower pace to open up is respected, not resented. They want to know they can be quiet, reserved, even emotionally unavailable at times, and still be accepted, because for them, that's when trust begins. When they're not being pushed, when no one's trying to change them, when their emotional rhythms are respected, that's when they start to soften. Most people think that to get an avoidant to open up, you have to pull more, talk more, show more love. But for an avoidant, love doesn't look like intensity. It looks like consistency without pressure, the freedom to breathe, the space to be. The trust that they won't be abandoned if they don't immediately give you the closeness you want. The safety they desire doesn't come from constant reassurance. It comes from being around someone who knows how to sit in stillness, who doesn't panic in silence, and who offers presence without expectation. That kind of safety is rare, but when it shows up, it begins to melt the walls they've spent a lifetime building. Avoidants often carry the silent burden of believing that their emotions are either too much or not enough for the people around them. This belief doesn't come out of nowhere. It's shaped by years of emotional programming where expressing need was either ignored, shamed, or met with rejection. Because of this, they develop a powerful internal rule. Don't show vulnerability. Don't show need. Don't let anyone too close. They may crave love and connection like anyone else, but the way they go about seeking it is through distance control and emotional self-containment. So when someone comes into their life and tries to fix them, tries to force them to open up, tries to analyze their every behavior, or pushes them to talk about their feelings, they shut down even more, not because they don't want intimacy, but because this fixing feels like pressure. It reinforces their deepest fear. Something is wrong with me. And when they feel that, they retreat even further behind the emotional walls they've built. What avoidants truly long for is not someone who diagnoses their emotional habits or tells them how they should love. They want someone who understands them without trying to change them. Someone who can witness their emotional distance without making it a personal wound. Someone who says, I see you and I respect your process. Because for avoidance, trust is not built through grand gestures or emotional intensity. It's built through consistent, low-pressure presence. They need to feel like they are allowed to exist as they are without being treated like a project, without being pushed to heal on someone else's timeline, without the constant, exhausting feeling that they're falling short emotionally. Because when someone comes along who truly accepts them without trying to fix them, something incredible happens. They start to relax. The hypervigilance quiets. The walls begin to shift. And for the first time, they feel like maybe, just maybe, they can let someone in. This is the paradox of avoidant attachment. What looks like emotional indifference is often emotional overwhelm. And what looks like resistance is often a deep longing to be loved just as they are. They don't need someone to solve their emotional maze. They need someone willing to walk beside them through it patiently, quietly, without the need to rush. Because in that kind of presence, avoidants finally feel like they can breathe, and eventually, trust begins to grow where fear used to live. Avoidants are often misunderstood as emotionally unavailable people who simply don't care. But the truth is far more complex. They are incredibly sensitive to emotional environments, so sensitive, in fact, that emotional chaos can feel like danger to them. They're not trying to escape love or avoid connection. What they're really trying to do is protect themselves from being emotionally overwhelmed, flooded, or consumed by someone else's intensity. This is why avoidants don't respond well to high-drama emotional displays. If you yell, cry uncontrollably, beg for answers, or demand closeness during moments of tension, they don't interpret it as love. They interpret it as pressure, as instability, as something that threatens their inner balance. It's not because they don't have empathy. In fact, many avoidants have a deep well of compassion, but they were never taught how to stay regulated in the face of another person's emotions. So when faced with intensity, their survival response kicks in: pull away, shut down, or go silent. What they're drawn to, whether they realize it or not, is calm energy, groundedness. Someone who knows how to hold space without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. Someone whose presence doesn't feel like an emotional demand. That kind of energy makes them feel safe. It gives them permission to show up in their own time, without pressure. It tells them, you don't have to perform here. You don't have to be perfect. I'm not going to explode if you're not ready. And that, to an avoidant, is incredibly soothing. Avoidants are highly attuned to emotional regulation. If you're reactive, clingy, or trying to provoke a response from them to feel secure, they will instinctively retreat. But if you're steady, if you can handle your own emotional waves without projecting them onto the relationship, they begin to feel like they're not being emotionally hijacked. That's when they start to come forward, not out of obligation, but out of trust. They're looking for someone who doesn't take their space, Personally, someone who doesn't need constant affirmation to feel loved, and someone who can remain emotionally centered even when things feel uncertain. That kind of person makes them feel like love is possible without losing themselves. They don't want a fixer, a savior, or someone to chase them down. They want someone whose emotional energy says, I can handle both your silence and your closeness. You're safe either way. And when they feel that, their guard begins to soften little by little. When an avoidant partner pulls back, it's easy to assume the worst. You might think they've lost interest, that they're punishing you, or that they've emotionally checked out. But in most cases, that withdrawal isn't about you at all. It's about their internal need to regulate emotional intensity. Avoidants are not wired to process closeness the way secure individuals are. To them, emotional intimacy can feel overwhelming, almost suffocating, even when it's something they deeply desire. So when the connection starts to feel too close, too fast, or too intense, they instinctively retreat, not to reject you, but to find emotional balance within themselves. The biggest mistake people make in this moment is to chase. They call text over, explain, demand clarity, or try to re-establish closeness immediately. But that energy only makes the avoidant shut down more. To an avoidant, chasing feels like pressure. It tells them, you're not allowed to take space. You have to be what I need when I need it. That triggers their deepest fear, losing their autonomy. So instead of bringing them closer, that pursuit pushes them even farther away. What avoidants truly need in these moments is space without abandonment, a calm presence. They need to know they can take time to breathe without the relationship crumbling. They're watching, not your words, but your energy. Are you reacting with panic? Are you trying to pull them back to feel better about yourself? Or are you grounded enough to stay emotionally available without pushing? This is where emotional maturity comes in. It means learning to hold space without needing immediate reassurance. It means resisting the urge to interpret their distance as rejection and instead understanding it as regulation. It's knowing that sometimes silence is their way of saying, I need to feel like myself again before I can show up for us. Being available without chasing is a subtle art. It means sending one thoughtful message and then giving them time. It means showing through your behavior that you're not disappearing, but you're not demanding either. That emotional neutrality speaks volumes to an avoidant. It tells them, you can be you. I'm not here to control you. I'm here when you're ready. And ironically, that's what makes them come back. Not because you pressured them to, but because they felt safe enough to return on their own terms. They begin to realize that closeness doesn't always equal suffocation, that love can include space, and that you, unlike the chaos they fear, can be a place of steady peace in their emotional world. Avoidants often live with a deep, hidden fear that they are either too much to handle or not enough to be truly loved. This inner belief can be so strong that it shapes how they show up in relationships, keeping others at a distance, putting on a mask of indifference, or downplaying their own needs. But beneath that surface is a longing that rarely gets acknowledged, the desire to be truly seen. Not just tolerated, not just managed, but genuinely understood and accepted for who they are, with all their complexities, contradictions, and emotional rhythms. Most people misunderstand avoidance as people who want to be left alone. That's not quite accurate. They don't want isolation. They want to be close, but only if closeness doesn't come with judgment or expectation. They're afraid that if they reveal their fears, their confusion, or their emotional struggle, they'll be rejected or criticized. So they stay guarded. They show you what they think is safe to show. But what they truly hunger for is someone who can look past the surface and say, I see you, even in your silence. I see your effort, even when you can't find the words. And I'm not going anywhere. That kind of emotional visibility, being known without being judged, is rare. And it's even harder for avoidants to believe it's real, because many have never experienced it. They've been conditioned to believe that love is conditional, that affection only comes when they perform, behave, or meet expectations. So when someone comes along who offers presence without demands, they don't quite know what to do with it. At first, they might even resist it, but over time, it begins to break down their inner walls. To be seen is not just about someone noticing your strengths. It's about someone witnessing your wounds and still staying. Avoidants need this more than they admit. They want to be with someone who doesn't need them to be perfectly emotionally available all the time. Someone who can see their fear and not react with frustration or neediness. Someone who holds steady, who stays grounded, and who sees them through a compassionate lens rather than a critical one. And when they feel that, when they sense they're being seen and still chosen, it begins to shift something deep inside. The walls don't drop all at once, but they begin to soften, because being seen, truly seen, in all their guarded humanness is what helps them begin to believe that real love is possible. Not just the kind they give, but the kind they're finally ready to receive. Avoidants have often experienced relationships where love was inconsistent, unpredictable, or came with strings attached. Maybe someone loved them only when they performed well, stayed quiet, or kept their emotions neatly tucked away. Maybe they were abandoned just when they started to let someone in. These experiences leave deep emotional imprints. So now, even though they crave connection, they live with a constant tension between desire and fear, wanting love but not trusting it, wanting to be close but terrified of what closeness might cost them. This is why the avoidant may seem hot and cold, engaged one moment, distant the next. It's not because they're trying to hurt anyone or play games. It's because their nervous system is constantly on high alert, asking, is this love safe? Is this going to swallow me? Will I lose myself in this? They may want intimacy deeply, but the fear of being consumed, of being emotionally controlled or overwhelmed, often wins out. So they push back, retreat, or shut down, not because they don't care, but because caring too much scares them. And yet, despite all that pushing away, what avoidants secretly want most is someone who doesn't give up on them. Not someone who chases, not someone who demands, but someone whose presence says, I see your fear and I'm not running from it, I'm still here. That kind of steady love doesn't suffocate, it stabilizes. It creates a quiet space where the avoidant can slowly begin to feel safe being vulnerable. It tells them, you can have space and still be loved. You can take your time and still be wanted. Avoidants are always looking, sometimes unconsciously, for signs that someone will stick around even when things get complicated. They've lived their lives bracing for people to walk away as soon as things get hard. But if someone can hold their ground, not forcefully, not with pressure, but with calm consistency, it disrupts the avoidant's old belief system. It introduces a new possibility that love can be steady, that people can stay, that they don't have to perform to be worthy of care. The avoidant doesn't want someone who panics every time they withdraw. They want someone who respects their boundaries, but doesn't emotionally disappear in response. Someone who doesn't try to fix them, but gently invites them to trust. And over time, that kind of presence becomes a healing force, not through grand gestures or constant closeness, but through unwavering emotional steadiness. When they see that someone won't give up on them, it gives them permission to stop giving up on love. This entire journey into the avoidant mind leads us to one powerful truth. Avoidants are not cold, they are guarded. They are not incapable of love. They are afraid of what love might take from them. Every time they pull away, it's not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and don't know how to process it without losing their emotional independence. Their actions may appear distant, even hurtful at times, but beneath the surface is someone desperately trying to protect a fragile part of themselves that's been wounded before. They want connection, but not at the cost of their safety, and they are constantly fighting an internal battle between reaching for love and running from it. The most powerful thing you can offer someone with avoidant tendencies is emotional safety without pressure. That means learning to be steady even when they pull back, to be present without chasing, and to love them without trying to rescue or repair them. Avoidants open up not in response to emotional demands, but in response to emotional maturity, your ability to hold space calmly, to allow their silence without reacting, to honor their need for space without making it mean abandonment. Teaches them something they never learned in the past, that love can feel safe, that closeness doesn't always come with a cost, and that they don't have to give up their identity to stay connected to someone else. They don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be real, to be grounded, consistent, and accepting of who they are as they are. That kind of love is not flashy. It doesn't scream for attention, but it creates a quiet revolution inside the avoidant. It dismantles the inner walls brick by brick, not through confrontation, but through compassion. It says, you don't have to perform here. You don't have to protect yourself from me. You're safe. And when an avoidant feels that level of presence, when they realize you're not leaving just because they needed a moment to breathe, they begin to trust not only you, but something even more important, their own capacity to love and be loved. So if you're in a relationship with someone who acts distant, guarded, or emotionally unavailable, don't assume their heart is closed. Look deeper. There is often a deeply loving, deeply sensitive person underneath the armor, someone who's never been met with enough calm, consistent love to feel safe taking the armor off. Be that calm. Be that consistent. And remember, they may act cold, but what they secretly want from you is something so simple, yet so powerful. It's your steady presence without pressure, your acceptance without condition, and your love without fear. That's the invitation that can transform not only the relationship, but the avoidant's entire view of love. Thank you for watching this video. If it spoke to something deep inside you, know that you're not alone, and you're exactly where you need to be. Healing and understanding take time, but every step counts. If you found value here, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this message with someone who might need it. Your support helps us reach more people who are silently struggling. Drop your thoughts or experiences in the comments. I read every one. Let's keep building a community where emotional growth, self-awareness, and real connection are always welcome. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and remember, real love begins with understanding. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.